All right, I got another video. So what I was attempting to convey is that, um, uh, a lot of um, this is the last video that I'll reference George Floyd, and that the only reason I do so is just a little bit to share testimony. And since I had got on that subject, I'm just taking the opportunity to share my testimony, which is not the same as his, but just is from the same area that he's from. I was having something of a testimony take place at the same time as George Floyd, or leading up to when we lost George Floyd, where when we lost George Floyd, that was a significant moment in human experience, that where the world was at as the pandemic, but also him as being slain on center stage, uh, 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 brutally assassinated on center stage while the world was having that much time on its hands to consume media and be affected by media. So you could say that something of news, ordinary news, there's not as much of news happening at the time that George Floyd was slain, because there's less of civilian activity, or patronizing of business going on at that time. So it was a little bit poignant. His slaying would have been poignant at any point of time. Also, we lost Philando Castile, about the time, right about the time that I began to have something, what would amount to a saga, and a few phases of very difficult living, and things that could be appreciated as warlike, and also war crime was happening for me right after about the time of losing Philando Castile, who also is me and Philando Castile went to the same high school. Not at the. I think he was a. I think Philando Castile. He was a senior. I think I might have went to high school with him. I think he was either a senior when I was a freshman, Philando Castile, or or he had graduated just before I started. But I had a very close sister, almost like a god sister, that put me on to a lot of life, like with upperclassmen and the church community where I was at. And she would have known Philando Castile because she was 2 years older than me. So she likely would have had experiences with him and been familiar with him because she knew all the people to know. And I think he might have been like that. Or she would know him. She would have to know him because they're the same age, about no more than 2 years apart at the same high school, and both being influential, savvy people. I would imagine Philando Castile was, and so is she. And actually, when Philando Castile was assassinated, I was he was assassinated along a road in a area where it's in the city that I live in, but it's like a district of the city that's almost like its own town now. About about uh about about 13 years before, no, about 11 years before Philando Castile was assassinated, I was at a party, not about a mile and a half from where Philando Castile was assassinated. And it was an African party. And at these African parties, you can't come in without. So I had a family friend, and I had a so there's a very close family that was close to my family, and they had two brothers that were older than me. They're both significantly older than me, but I was closer to one that was less older than me. But they were very charismatic and hilarious and good around people. And then they had their own apartment. They never got along, but they had their own apartment together that was next to a DJ. And so you can't so magnetic people, according to Osho, you actually have to be at odds with them, or you have to be on board with them. There's no middle way or ignoring people who are magnetic. But then so there would be like a DJ across the hallway, and we all ended up. I was I was always spending time with my friends. They're actually like my family. And now that I'm old enough, I can appreciate they were actually my brothers. Those guys, because a lot of my personality would be the dynamic of a person that would fit into being brothers with those people. The type of bearing that they had with me, the type of fighting that I did with them. You can't get along with your brother if you think about it, but maybe you're not supposed to. So I couldn't get away from these guys, but I also couldn't get along with them because we were just that close and had grown up together. Like they had taught me how to one had taught me how to ride a bike and whatnot, and we had always been around each other for many years. But they would be friends with anyone instantly, and people would tell them, people that don't know them would be very familiar terms with them very quickly, and they would have them in the palm of their hand. These two people that I grew up with, and so they had an African DJ that was across the hallway, and they had cool ass parties all the time. They're cool of cool. Like his that DJ, he was actually a DJ at a radio station where in our Twin Cities called KMOJ. That's like a very famous station where we're from, and they've always had beautiful. Whenever that was, I'm talking about like 11 years before Philando Castile was lost. That time, from that time to right now, they've been playing dope music on KMOJ. I would imagine without ceasing that long. And he was actually a DJ there, but he would DJ at all these cool clubs, like African clubs. But the cooler thing would be the party at their house after the club, which was only across the hallway, the next door over across the hallway, at the same place in the hallway from my friend's first apartment where I was always at. So I was privy to some of these parties. But one time at that party, he was talking about that road where Philando Castile was lost. No, they had that. So we were at that apartment for like a year. But then after about things, so like birds on a tree, like according to Arthur Avalon, relationships are like birds on a tree. So they dispersed after about a year. But I got up with them at their new home, which is less than a mile from that, probably 2 miles from where Castile was lost. And he said, you know, so we're at this party and whatnot. But as you go down this road, that road that Philando Castile was lost on was called Larpenteur. Larpenteur was actually my stomping grounds as a young man. Well, a lot of my stupid experiences when I was young, but also the experiences that would make me start to feel like and become a man, were always up and down Larpenteur. When I was a young man, one of my first lucrative strong jobs was a camp counselor at a Christian summer camp. I spent about 1/3 or about 1/4 of my earnings for that summer to give to my friend to buy his first car, all from a woman on that who lived on Larpenteur, and sold him. And then later he would move into the same complex that he bought the car from her from on Larpenteur, where Philando Castile was slain on Larpenteur 13 years later. Then he purchased that car. But me and him, we never did bad stuff. Like we weren't breaking the law together, but we were always driving to like a pool hall on Larpenteur, less than actually the same block where Philando Castile was slain. There's a pool hall there, and me and my friend were always at that pool hall. That's the only thing we did with that car, was go to the pool hall and try to find out where parties were at. We'd go to parties at the University of Minnesota, where my friend had matriculated there. I was not a student there. I had squandered. I would have been viable, but I didn't have the confidence to apply there. But I would go to all the parties at the University of Minnesota, and I knew all the students there because they went to my same high school, which is the same high school that Philando Castile went to. But that's all the more we did with that car. But we were always up and down Larpenteur in that car. All we did was go up and down Larpenteur and listen to music in that car of his. But then we'd go to parties at his apartment on Larpenteur, a mile down Larpenteur. Then his friend, the DJ, moved a little bit down the road where it has a different name when you cross into the city of Minneapolis, but it's the same road that had been Larpenteur. And he was saying, whenever you go up and down that road has about like 3 or 4 police precincts that converge on Larpenteur, and that the Larpenteur is littered with police officers. He said, never drive down Larpenteur coming out of these parties or in life. Stay the fuck off of Larpenteur. I don't mean to be heinous about that, since we lost Philando Castile there, as though he would know that. But this person, he said very specifically, stay off of Larpenteur because there are too many police precincts, and you get pulled over by 3 cops the same night trying to drive down Larpenteur at the same time. And actually, my friend, my older friend, my best friend's older brother, I was once in a car with him on Larpenteur, and he got pulled over just like that man had said, on Larpenteur. And I think he had some, the police officer let the rest of us leave because we were younger, and we got to go home down Larpenteur. But my friend got pulled over on Larpenteur about half a mile from where Philando Castile was. So it's actually not a coincidence that Philando Castile was targeted and pulled over exactly where he was on Larpenteur, according to my history and background and understanding of my environment. But I wanted to say, so that's Philando Castile. But then George Floyd was about 5 miles in the other direction, similarly famous slaying, but the same city, the same sister city. Philando was St. Paul, George Floyd was Minneapolis. I just wanted to say one more thing about George Floyd with this next video.